Hi everyone, I'm Lisa, your grief guide. This is my good friend Randi. She's also a grief guide and she has experienced a lot of grief in her own life. I've asked her to come today to share her story a bit in her loss of her parents, and hopefully you will find some comfort and support along the way. So Randi, tell us a little bit about what it was like as a kid and what happened to you.
Well, I often say I don't know much of a life without grief, unfortunately. Around when I was around 5, my dad was diagnosed with a heart condition called dilated cardiomyopathy, which is just basically an enlargement of the heart muscle. He was in a hospital a lot and eventually was put on a heart transplant list. And it was pretty new in the 90s, so we were actually on the news and it was a big story. Eventually he did receive a heart, but a year after that, that heart failed him and he passed away when I was 7 years old. It is interesting because I've always said, as children of grief at 7, I'm only able to comprehend and understand death in a 7-year-old's mind. I did know I would never see my dad again. I was able to comprehend those things, but you kind of, as you mature and grow up in emotions and in everything, you also grow and mature into your grief. And somehow as a kid, I slowly just got the message to hide it. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe my mom thought we were like, okay, because we were 7 and just kind of moves us along in life. But I just learned to hide my grief a lot. In my own room and crying, and I didn't want to hurt anybody else by making them sad. And it really wasn't until I was in college that I began to process it in small ways. And then unfortunately, soon after I got married and I was getting my master's, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer as well. So she battled that for a year and then passed away when I was 25. So I had just another wound of losing a parent so young, and that trauma just piled on top of another. And it broke me in so many different ways. And I think a lot of the fears and anxieties that I grew up with as a kid and the patterns of hiding my pain just resurfaced in big ways. And at that point, though, I was more forced to deal with it as an adult.
Talk a little bit about, I remember you saying that as a kid, you hid your grief, particularly from your mom, because you didn't want to make her feel bad. Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I try to think back why or not. My mom did end up getting remarried. We moved about 40 minutes from where I lived with my dad, and she had 4 more kids. I'm one of 7. And so there's so much good and blessings in my childhood life. And I think it just kind of moved on quickly. Not in a bad way. I don't ever, if I was in my mom's shoes too, I would probably make some of those same decisions. But as a child, it just felt like that life was kind of over, I think, in some ways, and there was so much good and happiness, and I didn't see my other siblings who also had my dad. I didn't see them upset or crying. I didn't see my mom upset and crying a lot. So in my mind, I was the only one, which in reality, as I grew up, is not true at all, but we were all kind of dealing with it, I think, on our own. It wasn't like no conversations were had or nothing was done, but it was minimal. And so I just thought I was the only one struggling with it some reason in my head. And so I didn't want to be probably the odd one out. I didn't want to make someone else sad that wasn't feeling it. You have that fear. I think even as adults, we have that fear when we're grieving, like you're having a moment or you're really struggling with something and you're scared to share it with someone else that has had that grief too, because you're like, I don't want to trigger them then. And so we kind of hide. I think the biggest thing I've always said with grief is, the biggest lie is like, I'm the only one. And it really isolates. Grief is really an isolating thing if we don't find ways to. And as a child, obviously I couldn't. I didn't know how. Like I needed a lot more guidance and Yeah.
Yes, and I think you make a good point too, like for adults who are listening today that maybe have lost a parent and have younger children in the home, is that we are very pain avoidant, grief avoidant. And I wonder if you would have had an adult in your life that gave you permission and space and freedom to be able to feel all the feelings and to help you through that. But again, we live in a world, in a culture where that's not normalized, it's not accepted.
Yeah.
So what you also experienced was the greatest fear of anybody, that you would lose your other parent. And that's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah.
What would you say was, when you said it broke you, how did that lead you to dealing more with your grief and being open to that and allowing it and giving yourself permission for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because my grief was at 7, and it was like this slow progression of grieving and dealing with it my whole life, I was able to maybe compartmentalize that grief a little bit more. I also grew up with this understanding that like my debt was paid, like it wouldn't happen to me again. However, I think we all know, we've talked about this often in our grief groups, the anxiety of the next thing that's going to happen. I lived with that my whole life as a child. Like I had this fear of constantly losing someone else. But I was able to tell myself that's not going to happen again. That's not going to happen. You're just making that up in your head, which is true with anxiety a lot. And yet it could though. And it did to me. So I think it just shook my whole worldview, my whole understanding of life in deeper ways. And because I had slowly dealt with my childhood grief, but not fully, I don't think, in ways that I could even understand, that it re-triggered all of that too, on top of it. And I couldn't function in the world the way I used to. I couldn't put on the happy face, the career that I was in. I could not pretend anymore. Just my whole understanding of life was changed, and I knew I couldn't function that way anymore. And so it just led me to get more help. And then, as we have shared too, I was working with Lisa. She was my boss when she had lost her son, that I finally had other people in my life that were going through it too, and wasn't just hiding it and was sharing it openly. And that was my first experience of that. And so it was finally, I felt like I could take a deep breath. I was like, someone else gets it. Like I am not alone. Because I think that same lie that I had as a child, that something was wrong with me, I'm alone in this, why am I struggling so hard, then just continued on once I lost my mom. Because again, I didn't have anybody telling me like, you lost your mom. Like this is supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to like go away in a day, but no one still gave me that permission. Like everywhere I went, people just expected me to be okay. Like friends and family and my job, like they just expected like me to be the same, and I wasn't. And so I just think it forced me to have to deal with it, and or like I just couldn't function the same way.
Is that, I would guess, just because I know you pretty well, but would that be one of the things that you would want somebody to know who's lost a parent, is what you just said? Like, you lost your mother, you lost your father. Like, these are significant relationships, and you need safe spaces and people to be able to grieve. And not to just think, well, you know, that's the normal course of life. Some people would say that, you know, a parent goes before a child. That's not okay, right? Because this is someone who's been ripped out of your life in death. What else would you say to someone that's lost a parent?
I guess to name, like Lisa said, for sure to name what a traumatic experience that is. I do love the saying that grief is grief. And at the same time, like you said, it can it's natural to lose a parent, but when it's so young and so soon, there's different layers to that grief. I think losing a parent, you lose at a young age, you lose a caregiver, you lose part of your identity. You're so attached to your parent as a child. Like, they're part of your identity for a long time. They're supposed to be, and you lose so much of that. And so it makes sense that it'd be really, really hard. And yeah, I guess.
What would you say to someone who, as you lost your mom a little bit older, and had obviously a deeper relationship for a longer period of time, what would you say, like, what would you want somebody to know?
Yeah, I think I lost my mom at a very transitional time in my life. I was just, like, I think, even though I was 25, I think because I went to college and then just got married, I was just kind of like leaving her in some ways, you know what I mean? And I lost just like a lot of my guidance and that friend, like that one mentor that you just call all the time, and especially entering into other areas in adulthood, whether you become a mom yourself or a parent. And it's just very lonely. I think it can be very like
feel a little lost.
Yeah,
a little lost in life.
I think one thing too that I realize is we always want to know where we come from. You know, that's something so deep in our identity. We want to know where we come from, whether it's your culture or whether it's your family. And I feel like that had been taken away from me a lot. Even though I had my mom till 25, I think I was just entering into this stage where I was like, I want to know you as a person, Mom. Like, because before we don't see our parents as people, you know, they're just like, you know,
exactly.
We get what we get from them.
Yes.
Like, they're their caregiver, they're the giver. So I like wanted to know her as a person more, and I think I lost that. And same with my dad. Like, what parts of me, especially because I lost him so young, what parts of me are like him? How, like, I just don't know. I don't know those stories, and that's really hard, I think, for me to not have that.
Well, and I think you make the point that it's another source of grief, right? So not only, we always say grief is so layered, and it has so many tentacles, right, and touches so many parts of our life. So not only did you lose your parents, you lost everything that was attached to them that is part of you, right, or was becoming part of you, or the future, or as you said about now you being a mother and not having your mother, like, and that's a grief that will stay with you the rest of your life, right? And so I think it's important that we are naming that for people that have lost parents, that they understand that if they're experiencing an identity crisis, or if they're experiencing this deep, hole, because now either they're in a family or there's other things going on in their life, like, that's normal, that's natural, that is all part of the grieving process when you lose a parent. Well, Randi, thank you so much for being with us today. And I want to say that if you are continuing to struggle in your grief, need extra support, need extra help, please find your way around the Grief Guide app, and there will be plenty of support and help and resources for you there. See you, everybody.